Today we will look at the desperate attempt of the three sons of the Emperor to save their beloved empire from crumbling, and the glorious yet fragile triumvirate that ended up in pieces, leading to the dramatic duel between Guilliman and Lion L. Johnson. The Ultramarines, one of the most iconic and revered Space Marine chapters in the Imperium, embody the principles of glory, duty, and discipline. As descendants of the primarch Guilliman, they adhere strictly to the Codex Astartes, a comprehensive set of doctrines that guide their military strategies, organizational structure, and conduct. The Ultramarines trace their origins back to the Great Crusade, when the Emperor of Mankind sought to reunite the scattered human worlds under the banner of the Imperium. Their primarch, Guilliman, was discovered on the world of Macragge, where he had already established a thriving and orderly civilization. Guilliman's leadership and administrative genius were instrumental in shaping the Ultramarines into the paragons of order and efficiency they are known as today. One of the most defining aspects of the Ultramarines is their strict adherence to the Codex Astartes. Written by Guilliman himself, the Codex serves as a comprehensive guide to the organization, tactics, and philosophy of the Space Marines. It prescribes the division of Space Marine legions into smaller, more manageable chapters, each consisting of 1,000 warriors. The Ultramarines' rigid adherence to these guidelines has made them a model for other chapters and a stabilizing force within the Imperium. The Ultramarines are renowned for their tactical flexibility and discipline. Unlike some other Space Marine chapters that might specialize in particular forms of warfare, the Ultramarines are adept at adjusting their strategies to meet the demands of any battlefield scenario. This versatility is a direct result of their adherence to the Codex Astartes, which emphasizes a balanced and pliant approach to warfare. Their ability to coordinate and execute complex battle plans with precision has earned them a reputation as one of the most effective fighting forces in the galaxy. Honor and nobility are core to the Ultramarines' identity. They view themselves as the protectors of humanity and the upholders of the Emperor's vision. This sense of duty extends beyond the battlefield. The Ultramarines are also known for their efforts to govern and protect the worlds within their realm, known as Ultramar. Guilliman's teachings emphasize the importance of governance and stewardship, and the Ultramarines take this role seriously, ensuring that the planets under their protection thrive and contribute to the greater good of the Imperium. Ultramar, the realm governed by the Ultramarines, is often cited as a model of effective imperial governance. It consists of several prosperous and well-defended worlds, each benefiting from the stability and order imposed by the Ultramarines. The success of Ultramar is a testament to Guilliman's vision and the chapter's commitment to upholding his principles. It serves as a beacon of hope and a standard for other imperial worlds to aspire to. The recent return of Guilliman from stasis has reinvigorated the Ultramarines and the Imperium as a whole. As the avenging son, Guilliman brings with him not only unparalleled strategic acumen, but also a renewed sense of purpose and direction. His leadership has been crucial in the ongoing efforts to combat the myriad threats facing the Imperium, from the insidious forces of chaos to the persistent tides of Xenos invaders. However, the Ultramarines' dedication to the Codex has its downside. As the Codex commands, chapters' numbers are limited, and their numbers cannot exceed 1,000 warriors. This limits the ability to spread order and protection, and only a few worlds receive a blessing of peace and prosperity under the rule of the chapter. Moreover, honor and dignity is a luxury at war. Ultramarines rarely resort to desperate measures or unorthodox tactics, making them an efficient yet predictable force. They have to rely on their less conservative allies to do the dirty work when facing an especially devious foe. Speaking about those allies, there is another Space Marine chapter in the Imperius, the infamous Dark Angels. One of the most enigmatic and reticent Space Marine chapters, they are defined by their relentless pursuit of redemption and their collective complex, the Dark History. As the first of the Emperor's Space Marine legions, they hold a unique place within the Imperium of Man. The Dark Angels were the first legion of Space Marines created by the Emperor of Mankind, and their primarch, Lion L. Johnson, was found on the death world of Caliban. Johnson, a formidable warrior and leader, united the knightly orders of Caliban and brought them into the Imperium. Under his leadership, the Dark Angels became a strong force during the Great Crusade, known for their prowess in battle and their strict adherence to martial discipline. One of the most defining events in the history of the Dark Angels is the fall of Caliban and the resulting Great Betrayal. During the Horus Heresy, a civil war that tore the Imperium apart, the Dark Angels were away from their home world. In their absence, a rebellion led by Luther, Johnson's closest friend and confidant, erupted on Caliban. When Johnson returned, a cataclysmic battle ensued, resulting in the destruction of Caliban. The traitors, known as the Fallen, were scattered across the galaxy. This event left a deep scar on the chapter and set them on a path of secrecy and redemption. The Dark Angels are defined by their unyielding quest to hunt down and capture the Fallen. This secretive mission, known only to the highest ranks of the chapter, drives many of their actions and decisions. The Inner Circle, comprising the most trusted and senior members of the chapter, oversees this eternal hunt. The existence of the Fallen and the true nature of the chapter's mission are hidden from the wider Imperium and even from the majority of the Dark Angels themselves. This obsession with vindication and privacy often leads them to make morally ambiguous decisions, prioritizing their quest over other Imperial objectives. Surreptitiousness is a core aspect of the Dark Angels' identity. The chapter is divided into several distinct groups, each with varying levels of knowledge about their true mission. The Death Wing, the first company, consists of the chapter's most elite warriors, all of whom are privy to the truth about the Fallen. The Raven Wing, the second company, specializes in rapid response and reconnaissance, often tasked with locating the Fallen. The rest of the chapter remains largely unaware of the dark secrets held by their leaders, maintaining a facade of normalcy. The Dark Angels are renowned for their martial prowess and tactical flexibility. They excel in various forms of warfare, from close-quarters combat to armored assaults and aerial strikes. The chapter has a wide array of unique units, weapons and combat tricks at their disposal. Their specialized forces, such as the Deathwing Terminators and the Ravenwing Bikers and Land Speeders, are highly skilled and equipped with the best war gear available. This versatility makes them a formidable force on the battlefield, capable of adapting to and overcoming diverse threats. The legacy of their primarch, Lionel Johnson, continues to influence the Dark Angels. Johnson was a master strategist and a paragon of glory and duty. His disappearance during the final stages of the Horus Heresy has left the chapter with a sense of unresolved duty and loss. The Dark Angels strive to uphold Johnson's ideals and honor his memory through their continuous pursuit of the Fallen and their unwavering commitment to the Emperor. There was a dark chapter in Imperium history called the Imperium Secundus. Heresy comes in many forms. It can be blatant, like the one which now tears down the stars, but it can be subtle too, accidental. To make an example, the building of a new Imperium when the old one is not yet pronounced dead. I am not building my own Imperium, Gantulga. I am preserving what's left of the original. Guilliman, Lord of Macragge, conversing with Timur Gantulga, drop-site massacre survivor of the White Scars Legion. Following the devastating Battle of Calth, the 13th Legion had been severely weakened and no longer posed a significant threat to Horus's plan to march on Terra. Erebus had completed his vile ritual on Calth's surface, summoning a ruin storm in the galaxy's eastern fringe, a massive warp storm more destructive than anything humanity had encountered since the Age of Strife. This ruin storm was intended to rend the void, splitting the galaxy and making vast regions of the Imperium of Man impassable for many centuries. It would isolate and trap loyalist forces like the Ultramarines, preventing them from coordinating and supporting each other as the traitor legions advanced toward Terra. It even temporarily obstructed their ability to warn each other of Horus's betrayal and the interstellar civil war engulfing the Imperium. The ruined storm would leave Terra isolated, vulnerable to Horus's looming shadow. Cut off from the Imperium, the Lord of Macragge decided to secure the 500 worlds of Ultramar. He aimed to anchor the remnants of the Imperium on the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge, The 13th Legion had discovered a way to navigate their void ships through the warp without the Astronomican's beacon, using the recently found Xenos technology on Sotha known as the Pharaohs. The Ultramarines managed to maintain some security of transit and the possibility of properly reassembling their void ships when transitioning from the warp into real space. For those trapped behind the ruin storm, the 500 worlds were effectively the Imperium. Everything else, the rest of the Imperium, the security of Terra, the survival of the Emperor, was theoretical. Macragge was the only certainty, the only foundation Guilliman knew he could rely on in such extremity. Guilliman hesitated to formally and publicly declare the formation of the Imperium Secundus, confiding his intentions only to his closest advisors. Though he was convinced of its necessity, he did not shrink from its less savoury aspects. He wasn't driven by fear of usurping the Emperor like Horus. In truth, his hesitation stemmed from grief. Grief over the possible loss of his father, the Emperor Terra, and the grand dream of the Imperium. He believed the only way for their civilization to survive was to consolidate within the 500 worlds of Ultramar. It was a burden Guilliman had never sought, made heavier by his profound sorrow. The avenging son refused to declare himself the new emperor, despite his advisors' suggestions to at least proclaim himself regent of Imperium Secundus. He hated the word and the thought of ruling. Guilliman knew he could not both command and rule. He could not administer this new empire and be its figurehead. His advisors insisted no one else could serve as head of state or regent, for he was the last known loyalist primarch, the last loyal son of the emperor. He was destined to become the rallying point of Imperium Secundus, to reveal his strength, resolve, and glory like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Despite their urgings, Guilliman remained reluctant. He could not build an empire and place himself on the throne, even if he were the only candidate. It smacked of hubris, arrogance, overweening pride, and foul ambition, echoing the deeds of Horus Lupercal. Guilliman feared that declaring himself as the ruler of Imperium Secundus would tarnish his reputation among those who still respected him and confirm the suspicions of his detractors. They would perceive him as opportunistically seizing power during a crisis, branding himself as their king. Critics would accuse the Lord of displaying undue eagerness and exploiting the situation for personal gain. Guilliman would have preferred any loyal primarch, even the fierce Leman Russ, to assume the role of acting ruler of Imperium Secundus rather than himself. It was a responsibility he had no desire to take on, but, with no other candidates available, it became a burden he was ultimately willing to bear. However, Guilliman's prayers were soon answered with the arrival of an Imperial expeditionary fleet from the Thramus sector in the eastern fringes. This fleet, led by none other than Primarch Lion L. Johnson of the Dark Angels Legion, translated into the system. Guilliman felt immense relief that one of his wayward brothers had arrived in his hour of need. Yet, of all his brothers, he wondered why it had to be the Lion who found his way through the storm. While Guilliman greatly admired the Lord of the First Legion, he believed a shadow always hung over him. The Lion was shrouded in secrets, playing his cards close to his chest, and often walking his path alone. There was a wild, untamed element in him. The Lion should have been as noble as any of Guilliman's brothers, but they had never been close, and there was something sly about him. Despite his personal reservations, Guilliman welcomed the Lion with the formality and respect his position deserved. The galaxy contained only 18 primarchs, and the meeting of even 2 of them was a rare event, a moment when the balance of the cosmos seemed temporarily and significantly weighed. Guilliman offered his brother an honor guard of nearly 47,000 soldiers, along with over 1 million civilians crowding the streets of Macragge for a glimpse of the Lion Lord and his renowned warriors. The people of Macragge came out in droves to celebrate the Lion's arrival. After a formal inspection of the Ultramarines Legion's impressive Macragge Civitas, the capital city of the planet, the 2 primarchs retired to a private chamber for a candid conversation. Guilliman had designed this meeting place specifically for the Emperor and his 20 sons. A long stone table dominated the room, surrounded by 21 chairs, each crafted for the giant stature of a primarch and hewn from the same mountain granite as the table. The backs of these chairs were adorned with banners, each representing the personal symbol of one of the primarchs and his legion. The great seal at the head of the table was draped with the imperial pennant of terror. 2 of the banners were plain, made of bleached, undyed cloth, signifying places of honor for the missing but never forgotten lost primarchs of the 2nd and 11th Legions. The other 18 banners represented the Legiones Astartes themselves. Guilliman had created this chamber in the greatest city of his homeworld with the hope that someday, after the Great Crusade, all his brothers could sit at a table with their father as equals and discuss the matters of the Empire. In this private chamber, Guilliman disclosed his plans to the Lion for the continuity of the Imperium. He emphasized the necessity for the Imperium to endure in one form or another, making it clear that they must ensure its survival. Guilliman confirmed to the Lion that he was in the process of establishing a second Imperium upon the remnants of the first. He was transparent about his motives, stressing that his intention was solely to keep the flame of their father's dream alive. This was not an act of empire building or an attempt to claim the throne for himself as Horus had done. The avenging son already commanded a stellar empire, Ultramar, the 500 worlds. Guilliman wanted the Lion to understand that his only goal was to ensure the survival of their father's vision. Terra might have fallen, and their father might already be dead. The ruin storm prevented them from knowing the truth, and Guilliman intended to use this moment to their advantage, not to usurp the rightful ruler of the Imperium. He needed the Lion to see that he was not Horus. Guilliman explained to his brother that the crucial difference between himself and Horus was his lack of desire to be the new emperor. Instead, he proposed that the Lion take up the mantle as the new regent of Imperium Secundus. Ultimately, the arrival of their brother Sanguinius and his Blood Angels Legion on Macragge, fresh from the disastrous campaign in the Cygnus cluster, brought a crucial turning point. Guilliman persuaded the hesitant angelic primarch to assume the role of regent of Imperium Secundus. Recognizing that Sanguinius embodied the noble qualities of the emperor more profoundly than any other. With Sanguinius accepting the position of Imperator Regis, regent of Imperium Secundus, Guilliman took on the role of Lord Warden. Meanwhile, Lionel Johnson was appointed the Lord Protector of Imperium Secundus, a title akin to that of War Master. The first significant test for Imperium Secundus came during the Battle of Sotha, where loyalist forces defended the pharaohs against a traitor onslaught. Fortunately for Guilliman, his forces emerged victorious, preserving the fleet's ability to navigate through the warp disturbances caused by the ruin storm. Following the battle, tensions rose between Guilliman and Lionel Johnson over how to deal with Conrad Kurz, the primarch of the traitor Night Lord's Legion, who remained at large on Sotha. Kurz was suspected of orchestrating a series of suicide bombings and uprisings aimed at undermining Guilliman's authority on Macragge. In response, Lionel Johnson, in his capacity as Lord Protector, imposed martial law on Macragge using the Dark Angels. He deployed the Dreadwing, one of the 6 specialized hexagrammaton formations or wings, known for employing devastating weapons like phosphex and vortex weapons, to crush the rebellious areas of the planet. Kurz was eventually captured by the Lion in the Illyrium region and brought to trial. Back on Terra, Malcador had anticipated that Guilliman might attempt to establish his own empire if cut off from the throne world. The regent of Terra was apprehensive that the Primarch might try to usurp the Emperor's authority. Malcador even hoped that the Dark Angels would intervene if Guilliman attempted to secede in a manner reminiscent of Horus. All this led to the incredible tension between Lion and Guilliman and their chapters. Several times peace held by a thread. One nudge from the forces of darkness could start a fire that would consume brothers in a civil war. What if Tzeentch orchestrated a scheme to push the Primarchs just a little more? On the verdant planet of Kalistra, a gleaming jewel in the crown of the Imperium, whispers of sedition began to echo through the bustling marketplaces and stately halls. Known for its thriving trade and loyal citizens, Kalistra had long been a bastion of the Emperor's light. Yet, beneath its surface, a dark shadow was growing. Heretical whispers and insidious propaganda spread like wildfire, suggesting that the planet's loyalties were shifting. Guilliman was quick to receive reports of the burgeoning heretical cult. His network of spies and informants within the administratum had flagged unusual activities, including clandestine gatherings and an increasing number of disappearances among the citizenry. Guilliman understood the gravity of the situation. A cult, if left unchecked, could destabilize not just Kalistra but the entire sector. Determined to act swiftly and decisively, Guilliman summoned Captain Cato Sicarius to his command chamber. The stoic captain of the Second Company was renowned for his tactical brilliance and unyielding loyalty. Guilliman's azure eyes bore into Sicarius as he laid out the mission. "Kalistra is on the brink of heresy," Guilliman said, his voice a steely command. "I am entrusting you and the Second Company to investigate these disturbances. Root out the corruption and restore order with precision. We cannot afford to let this disease spread." Sicarius saluted crisply. "By your command, Primarch, we shall not fail." Meanwhile, in the shadowy depths of the rock, the mobile fortress monastery of the Dark Angels, another drama was unfolding. Lion L. Johnson, the enigmatic Primarch of the First Legion, was ensconced in his private sanctum when the whispering ghosts of the past reached him. His agents' reports had surfaced of sightings of the Fallen, those renegade Dark Angels who had betrayed the Emperor during the Horus Heresy. These traitors were rumoured to be hiding among the populace of Kalistra, using the chaos sown by the heretical cult as a cover for their machinations. Their purpose was unknown, but their actions looked desperate. The Fallen, well aware of being relentlessly hunted, are known for their covertness and discretion, rarely act in the open. L. Johnson's emerald eyes narrowed in contemplation. The shame of the Fallen weighed heavily upon him, a stain upon his legion's honour that he was determined to cleanse. He summoned Supreme Grand Master Azrael and Interrogator Chaplain Asmodai, two of his most trusted and formidable warriors. "The Fallen have resurfaced on Kalistra," L. Johnson intoned, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "We must act swiftly and decisively. I will lead a detachment to Kalistra myself. You two will accompany me. I have a sense this is no usual threat." Azrael, ever stoic, nodded. Asmodai's eyes gleamed with a fierce light. Thus, two mighty Primarchs set their forces on a collision course towards Kalistra, each driven by a burning purpose. The seeds of discord had been sown and the fires of conflict were about to ignite. Altheon, the capital of Kalistra, was a breathtaking city of grand, white marble edifices and sprawling, lush forests. The grandeur of its architecture, coupled with the serene natural beauty, made it a jewel of the Imperium. However, beneath this veneer of tranquility, tensions simmered and the scent of rebellion was in the air. The Ultramarines descended upon Altheon with the precision and discipline for which they were famed. Drop pods and Thunderhawk gunships pierced the sky, their arrival marked by the controlled chaos of military action. Within days they had secured key strategic points throughout the city, establishing their command post on the capital hill of Altheon. Guilliman's presence was a beacon of authority and confidence. His armour, resplendent with the sigils of Ultramar, gleamed in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the growing shadows of dissent. Guilliman stood on a raised platform in the centre of the command post, surveying a holographic map of Altheon and its surrounding areas. His keen mind processed reports and data feeds. Something was off. Combat reports hinted towards the presence of space marines among the heretics, yet no sign of chaos. The Ultramarines soon after encountered unexpected resistance. Insurgents emerged from the shadows, engaging in guerrilla tactics and precise surgical strikes against the Imperium forces. What was most unsettling were the markings these insurgents bore, emblems and insignias reminiscent of the Dark Angels. This anomaly sparked a seed of suspicion in Guilliman's mind. Why were his brothers here, and what role did they play in this unrest? As the Ultramarines tightened their grip on Altheon, a different kind of storm was gathering. Under the cover of night, black ships descended silently from the sky, as stealthy as predators stalking their prey. The Dark Angels had arrived. Lion L. Johnson personally led his warriors through the dense forests and ancient ruins that bordered the city. Their mission was clandestine and fraught with the weight of history. Hunt the Fallen and cleanse their honor. Johnson moved with the grace of a hunting beast. His thoughts focused on the task at hand. The whispers of the fallen had haunted him for too long, and now, on Kalistra, he had a chance to exorcise those spirits. He convened with Supreme Grandmaster Azrael and Interrogator Chaplain Asmodai in a concealed outpost deep within the forest. At that time, the reports about heavy Ultramarine presence were confirmed. "Our objective is clear," Johnson stated, his voice a low growl. "We will find the fallen and bring them to justice before Guilliman does, at all costs." Azrael broke silence. "And what orders if we encounter another chapter? What if they obstruct our progress?" Asmodai's expression was one of grim determination. He knew the answer. "At all costs," Lion confirmed his command. The Dark Angels moved with a cunning born of millennia of warfare, establishing a network of hidden outposts and patrols. They scouted the terrain, their actions masked by the natural cover of the forest and the ruins. Their presence on Kalistra was a shadowy counterpoint to the Ultramarines' open display of might. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between the two forces grew. Guilliman's Ultramarines faced increased skirmishes with insurgents who seemed to have intimate knowledge of the city's layout and defences. The presence of Dark Angels, yet elusive, became obvious and deepened Guilliman's dark suspicion and unease. In the dead of night, Guilliman called a council of his senior officers. "We face more than mere heresy here," he said, his voice measured but tinged with underlying tension. "There is another force at play. Heretics are either controlled or assisted by the fallen, and our Dark Brothers know of it. The fact that they act on their own and did not contact us to coordinate means possible conflict." Captain Sicarius, his blue armor scarred from recent battles, stepped forward. "My lord, in case of direct contact, should we engage?" Guilliman's eyes narrowed. "We must confront this mystery head-on. Prepare a delegation. We will seek out the Lion and demand answers. I will lead this mission myself. Until then, avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Meanwhile, within the dense forest, Johnson and his warriors continued their hunt. The Lion's heart was heavy with the knowledge that the heresy on Kalistra might be tied to the darkest chapter of his legion's history, and Guilliman might uncover its pages first. The stage was set. The seeds of discord had taken root, and a storm was brewing on Kalistra. The paths of Guilliman and Johnson were on a collision course, driven by duty, glory, and the shadows of their respective past. The fate of Altheon, and perhaps the Imperium itself, hung in the balance. The ruins of Altheon's grand palace, once a symbol of the city's former glory, now stood as a testament to the chaos that had enveloped Kalistra. Broken columns and shattered statues lay scattered across the marble floor, and the once magnificent throne room was now a desolate expanse of decay. It was here, amidst the remnants of grandeur, that two of the Imperium's greatest leaders would face each other. Guilliman and Lion Johnson, each a paragon of their respective legions, stood in stark contrast to the devastation around them. The tension between the two primarchs was palpable, an electric charge that seemed to thrum in the air. Guilliman's cerulean eyes were sharp and assessing, while Johnson's emerald gaze was cold and unwavering. "Why are your warriors here, brother?" Guilliman's voice was measured, each word carrying the weight of his authority and concern. His hand rested on the hilt of the Emperor's sword, not as a threat, but as a reminder of his readiness. Johnson's gaze did not waver. "There are secrets here that you do not understand. The fallen are my burden to bear. This is my fight." His voice was low, almost a growl, the intensity of his emotions barely contained. Guilliman's fist tightened around the hilt of his sword, his knuckles turning white. "Your duty? We face a threat to the Imperium, not just your honor. We must act as one." There was a plea in his voice, a desperate hope that his brother would see reason. The Lion's face darkened, shadows playing across his features. "Is this a suggestion or a command?" His voice was resolute. "This is absurd. Why do I see hostility when I offer a helping hand? Can't a brother avenge his brethren honor, since when having allies is a disgrace? Is this just a facade to hide your endless secrets and schemes you're so afraid might come to the Emperor's light? You are not him. I do not answer to you. Leave these heretics to me or face the consequences. The argument escalated, each primarch's words cutting deep, like blades drawn from scabbards. Guilliman's frustration boiled over, his sense of duty to the Imperium clashing violently with L. Johnson's unyielding sense of personal vendetta. "We cannot afford to be divided," Guilliman insisted, his voice rising. "The ruined storm isolates us, the traitor legions close in on terror, and here we are bickering over past sins. The Imperium needs us united." L. Johnson's response was swift and cutting. "United under your rule, no doubt. You want me to fall in line with your principles, your vision, your empire? What if I would? Whom would you subjugate next? Sanguinius? Does it bother you so much that it is not you that was chosen as the new emperor?" Guilliman's eyes flashed with anger. "Believe it or not, brother, but I think of the Imperium and its subject long before myself. The concept, I am sure, is very hard for you to grasp." Their words echoed through the ruined palace, each syllable laced with years of unspoken rivalry and unaddressed grievances. They stood, locked in a silent battle of wills, neither willing to back down. The tension between them was a palpable force, threatening to ignite into something far more destructive. "Enough," Guilliman finally said, his voice a low rumble. "We will solve this here on Kalistra. You have spoken truly. I am not the Emperor, but I am his sword and his wrath." Guilliman unsheathed his sword. L. Johnson's eyes blazed with defiance. "I am not here to fight you, but I have a mission. I hope you will find wisdom and restrain yourself from interfering." He suddenly scoffed. "You accuse me of secrecy, self-righteousness and ambition, yet mark my words, it is you that will deliver the first blow." With heavy hearts and minds weighed down by unresolved conflict, the two primarchs turned and walked away, their paths diverging once more. The Grand Palace of Altheon, now a silent witness to their discord, seemed to shudder under the strain of their parting. Outside, the night had fallen, cloaking the city in darkness. The Ultramarines and Dark Angels, unaware of the full extent of their leaders' confrontation, continued their operations, each side wary of the other. The fragile non-aggression between the two legions teetered on the edge of collapse, the seeds of discord sown deep within their ranks. As Guilliman and L. Johnson retreated to their respective camps, the echoes of their argument lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the schism that threatened to rend them apart. The fate of Kalistra, and perhaps the Imperium itself, hung in the balance as two of its greatest champions grappled with their ideals and the shadows of their past. Days turned into weeks, and the situation on Kalistra grew increasingly dire. The once thriving planet was now a battleground, with the heretical cult exploiting the growing discord between the Ultramarines and Dark Angels to spread chaos and confusion. The whispers of sedition that had started this conflict were now screams of open defiance, echoing through the streets and across the plains. Inevitably, the Astartes' blood was spilt by their brothers. Guilliman, ever the master strategist, deployed his forces with meticulous precision. Tactical squads were sent to secure vital locations, establishing strongholds in key areas of Altheon. Devastators, armed with their formidable heavy weaponry, were positioned on high ground, providing a withering hail of covering fire to control the city's major thoroughfares. Predator tanks rumbled through the streets, their turret-mounted autocannons and sponson-lass cannons creating an impenetrable wall of firepower that deterred any would-be attackers. Every move Guilliman made was calculated, showcasing his unparalleled strategic thinking and command over his legion. However, the Dark Angels were not to be outdone. Renowned for their mastery of stealth and subterfuge, they launched a series of guerrilla attacks that disrupted Guilliman's carefully laid plans. Raven-wing bikers, swift and deadly, conducted hit-and-run raids on ultramarine supply lines and command posts, striking with pinpoint accuracy before vanishing into the dense forests and ruins. Deathwing Terminators, clad in their impenetrable tactical dreadnought armor, emerged from hidden tunnels and hidden passages to launch devastating surprise assaults on fortified positions. Their presence was a ghostly spectre that haunted Guilliman's forces, striking fear into even the bravest of warriors. The tension between the two legions reached a boiling point. Skirmishes and clashes became increasingly frequent, each side growing more wary and suspicious of the other. The Ultramarines saw the Dark Angels' tactics as a betrayal, a knife in the back from supposed allies. The Dark Angels, in turn, viewed the Ultramarines as overzealous and heavy-handed, their rigid tactics unsuited to the fluid and unpredictable nature of the conflict on Kalistra. The tipping point came one stormy evening when an Ultramarine patrol discovered a hidden cache of heretical artifacts in a Dark Angels outpost. The discovery sent shockwaves through Guilliman's forces. To him, this was irrefutable evidence of the Dark Angels' complicity in the heretical uprising. Amongst the artifacts was a proof, carefully placed there by Zench, that Lion Johnson had the chance to upper-hand Luther, the first fallen and his closest advisor, and prevent the destruction of Caliban. However, Lion hesitated and Imperium paid a dear price for his indecision. It became clear why Lion was so eager to keep secrets and hunt all the fallen himself to avoid public disgrace. Guilliman called a council of war, his commanders gathering in the command post to discuss their next move. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation and anger. "Brothers," Guilliman began, his voice a resonant boom that echoed through the chamber. "The Dark Angels are not just interlopers, they are collaborators. We must act decisively to root out this treachery and cleanse Kalistra of this corruption. Lion will face justice for his treachery." His commanders nodded in agreement, their faces grim and resolute. The decision was made. The Ultramarines would move against the Dark Angels to purge the taint of heresy from their midst. Meanwhile, in the shadowy depths of their own command post, Lion L. Johnson received word of Guilliman's accusations. His face darkened, eyes blazing with a cold fury. "This is an outrage," he declared, his voice a dangerous whisper. "Guilliman oversteps his bounds. The fallen are our responsibility, our burden to bear. He has no right to interfere." The Supreme Grand Master Azrael and Interrogator Chaplain Asmodai, standing by his side, nodded in agreement. "We will have to stand our ground, my lord," Azrael said, his voice firm. "We cannot allow the Ultramarines to dictate our actions." L. Johnson's mind raced, considering his options. The time for subtlety and stealth was over. "Prepare the Legion," he ordered. "We will show Guilliman and his warriors the true might of the Dark Angels." As night fell, both legions mobilized for war. The Ultramarines, clad in their cobalt-blue armor, marched in disciplined ranks through the city, their banners fluttering in the wind. The Dark Angels, cloaked in shadow and secrecy, moved through the forests and ruins like wraiths, their green and black armor blending seamlessly with the night. The first clash came at dawn. A squad of Ultramarine tactical marines, advancing through the ruins of a cathedral, was ambushed by Ravenwing bikers. The bikers struck with lightning speed, their plasma talons and twin-linked bolters cutting down the Ultramarines before they could react. The survivors regrouped, returning fire with their bolters and crack grenades, but the Ravenwing had already melted back into the shadows. Elsewhere, a Dark Angels outpost was hit by a devastating artillery barrage from Ultramarine whirlwinds. The Deathwing Terminators stationed there held their ground, emerging from the smoking ruins to launch a counterattack. Their assault cannons and power fists tore through the Ultramarine lines. The planet trembled as both legions prepared for a full-scale war. The Ultramarines fortified their positions, setting up kill zones and overlapping fields of fire. The Dark Angels, masters of ambush and deception, laid traps and prepared for close-quarters combat. The air was thick with the promise of bloodshed, and the fate of Kalistra hung in the balance. However, it was clear that Ultramarines are unlikely to win. Despite the discipline, heroics, and pristine tactics, Dark Angels resorted to treachery, low blows, and knew Ultramarine strategy all too well. In the heart of the city, Guilliman and L. Johnson faced each other once more, their eyes locked in a deadly stare. "This ends now," Guilliman declared, with a steely resolve. "I uncovered your sin. I accuse you of treason." L. Johnson nodded, his expression cold and determined. "I accuse you of weakness." As the sun rose over the battlefield, the two primarchs prepared for the final confrontation. The point of no return was reached. The duel between Guilliman and L. Johnson began with a thunderous clash, their immense forms casting long shadows in the dim light of the ruined cathedral. Guilliman's blade burned with righteous fire, while El Johnson's lion sword hummed with ancient power, its edge glowing with a greenish hue. Their first strikes were a flurry of motion, a symphony of metal clashing against metal. Guilliman's strikes were precise and calculated, each one aimed to exploit a potential weakness in El Johnson's defense. The lion, in contrast, fought with a primal ferocity, his attacks unpredictable and devastating. Guilliman feinted to the left, then spun around, bringing his sword in a sweeping arc aimed at El Johnson's torso. The lion anticipated the move, parrying with his sword and countering with a powerful backhand strike that forced Guilliman to step back. The primarch of the Ultramarines recovered quickly, using the strength of his master-crafted, nigh-impenetrable armor of fate to block a series of rapid blows from El Johnson. El Johnson shifted his stance, adopting a more aggressive posture. He launched into a series of rapid, slashing attacks, his blade a whirl of motion. Guilliman parried each strike with his weapon and armor, then retaliated with a powerful thrust aimed at El Johnson's shoulder. His idea was to find or create a weak point, and then strike through it, wounding his brother. The lion twisted his body, allowing the blade to pass by harmlessly, then stepped inside Guilliman's guard, delivering a punishing elbow strike to his ribcage. The force of the blow staggered Guilliman, but he quickly regained his footing. He activated the power field of his iron halo, crackling with energy. He struck with renewed vigor, each blow accompanied by a burst of electrical discharge. El Johnson gritted his teeth as he absorbed the impacts, his own blade glowing brighter as he channeled his rage into his attacks. It was obvious. While Guilliman wanted to subdue Lion, the latter went for the kill. The duel raged on, the primarch's movements blurring into a dance of death. Guilliman's tactical mind sought patterns in El Johnson's seemingly wild attacks, while the lion relied on his instincts and raw power. Guilliman spotted a momentary lapse in El Johnson's defense and struck with all his might, aiming for the lion's arm. El Johnson twisted his wrist, deflecting the strike, then countered with a powerful overhead slash. Guilliman raised a hand just in time, the impact sending shockwaves through his arm. He responded with a swift kick to El Johnson's, followed by a downward slash aimed at his opponent's torso. The lion dodged to the side, then launched himself at Guilliman, tackling him to the ground. They grappled on the cathedral floor, their immense strength causing the ground to crack and buckle. Guilliman managed to roll to his feet, his sword held in a defensive position. El Johnson was on him in an instant, his strikes a whirlwind of steel. Guilliman blocked and parried, each move precise and controlled. At that moment he felt overwhelmed, he felt eerie energy, he felt like he was fighting a greater demon, not his brother. El Johnson's eyes burned with fury as he started to attack with his sword and shield, using it as a battering ram. The Emperor's shield was unbreakable and was able to return any blow it received back at the attacker. Guilliman had to adapt his defense. Guilliman's mind raced as he analyzed El Johnson's new attack pattern. He activated the wrist-mounted bolter on his left arm, firing a burst of explosive rounds at El Johnson. The lion dodged the projectiles, but the distraction gave Guilliman an opening. He lunged forward, his sword aimed at El Johnson's torso. El Johnson deflected the strike with his shield, then countered with a powerful uppercut from his blade. The blow glanced off Guilliman's shoulder armor, but the force of it sent him staggering back. The lion pressed his advantage, delivering a series of rapid slashes that pushed Guilliman to the brink. Guilliman used all his strength to launch himself into the air. He arced over El Johnson, landing behind him with a thunderous crash. Before the lion could react, Guilliman struck with a powerful downward slash. El Johnson spun around, his sword meeting Guilliman's in a firework of sparks. The two primarchs locked blades, their faces inches apart. Guilliman's eyes burned with determination. "This ends now, brother!" El Johnson's lips curled into a snarl. "So be it!" With a surge of strength, Guilliman pushed El Johnson back. He followed up with a series of lightning-fast strikes, each one aimed at a vital point. El Johnson parried and dodged, his movements a blur. He activated the power field of his lion helm and used this momentum of defense to strike his brother with a devastating blow. Guilliman thrust his sword at El Johnson's chest as a counterattack, but the lion sidestepped and brought his own blade down in a powerful overhead strike. Guilliman raised his hand once again, relying on the strength of his armor, but the force of the blow shattered it. The impact sent Guilliman reeling, his arm numb and deeply wounded from the force of the strike. L. Johnson pressed his advantage, his strikes relentless. Guilliman fought back with all his might, but he was slowly being pushed back. In a final, desperate move, Guilliman went for the weak spot in the shoulder plate. He was creating the whole fight. In a reckless attack, he nearly cut Lion's arm off. Lion fell to his knees in a brief shock, and yet Guilliman's fate was sealed from the start. He showed mercy, he showed restraint, he did not want to kill. He could have finished Lion, but hesitated. Seizing the moment, Lion delivered a powerful thrust exactly in his brother's wounded arm, where armor of fate was shattered. The attack went through Guilliman's flesh, delivering a killing blow to the heart. The Lion roared in pain and fury, his eyes blazing with unbridled rage. He did not taste victory. He felled his own brother. He knew he would have lost if Guilliman had the same desire to kill. Lion was stood victorious, yet felt crushing defeat. Guilliman fell to his knees once again, his vision growing dim. L. Johnson looked at his dead brother. The fire in L. Johnson's eyes dimmed with a look of deepest sorrow. Any chance of unity, Imperium reborn and renewed, died with Guilliman. The all-consuming civil war was inevitable. "You were always the better man, Guilliman," Lion said, his voice heavy with regret. "But in war, such men do not belong." Lion stood up. "Your codex speaks of honor so much, yet you know nothing of it. There is no honor in defeat, however valiant it is." Lion destroyed the evidence of his sin on Kalistra once and for all, and banished the heretics and the fallen. However, he knew that Sanguinius would soon come to avenge Guilliman, and this time Lion will be ready. This time he will be the first to strike.